good morning to Europe. So my name is Victor Nkindi, and I am the policy advisor for Unity in Philia, based in Kigali, Rwanda. I have a European background as well. This is why I'm also a member of the European Business Chamber in Rwanda, one of the board directors. So this webinar today is our third webinar of the year, and it's about trade and investment between EU and East Africa in order to source business synergies. So the focus area of this webinar is about trade and economic strategies in Rwanda and East Africa from the EU perspective and vice versa. And also we'll look into sectorial insights, the diaspora capital, of course, the creative economy, food, beverage, and minerals, but also we would be together with today's participants, Mr. Konstantinos Sgouras, who is co-founder and the head of international administration at Unity in Philia. Welcome, Konstantinos. We are with Mr. John Kourkoutas, founder and managing director of MrExportToAfrica and board member of the Hellenic African Chamber of Commerce and Development. And we will be presenting ML Corporate Services, which is a trust company service provider, a fiduciary based in Kigali, Rwanda. In line with Rwanda's Kigali International Financial Center, we have now the capabilities to provide a same environment for investment and specific structures like SPVs, foundations, holdings, and so on in Rwanda. So it will be a very interesting and practical session today. We have the next 90 minutes to go through everyone's presentation and interaction. We do also have with us Eleni, and we'll be happy if you can introduce yourself as well to the panel.
Hello everyone, I'm Eleni Georgiou from the research group of the Hellenic Open University in Greece. I'm a senior project manager and lead research on quality, diversity, and inclusion on my team. I'm also deputy chair on the European network called Digital, which counts more than 115 members. I think is the number right now all across Europe, working quite a lot on digital inclusion. Like trade and investment is not my field of expertise, but I would be very happy to participate and if I'm able to contribute also to this webinar today.
Thank you, Eleni. And also we were with Hellenic Open University in, I think, one of the previous webinars. It was very interesting, and we actually had tangible synergy already with some of our partners and actors in the academic exchange sector in Rwanda. I will have the floor for you, Konstantinos, and I will also be sharing your presentation, or you want to have a short introduction before?
Let me do a brief introduction and then we can start the presentation. So I'd like to say good morning to John, Eleni, and my good friend Pan joining us from Thailand right now. I will say good evening if you're also living in Australia, as here is 7 p.m. So I'm the co-founder and head of international policy and administration in Philia, and I want to sincerely thank you for participating to this webinar. Now, this webinar, as I will further explain later, is the first stage of our strategic plan to support the collaboration between Europe and the East Africa community through Greece and Rwanda. But also we want to expand these connections to other regions of the world where we have solid presence, such as Korea, Australia, and Southeast Asia. So I want you to see this webinar as an introductory initiative that will continue in 2026 and 2027. And the aim of this, the goal of this, is to connect you with the wider and expanding international network of Unity.
Thank you so much, Konstantinos. I thank you for inviting me. Thank you for reaching out. It's an honor. I didn't even know the existence of your NGO, and I realized that it's quite useful and unique, and it's a worthwhile, let's say, discussion and effort. A couple of things about myself. My name is John Kourkoutas, born and raised in Greece. Spent the last 15 years in Africa, having based in Zambia and operations across the continent. Both myself and my business partner, who joined briefly, but I cannot say him now, Konstantinos, he's also Greek, residing in Zambia for the last 20 years. And what we do is we help companies to expand to sub-Saharan Africa. We have people on the ground across Africa in many countries, directly or indirectly. Since we have a Rwandan here, we've done business in Rwanda, but not as active as other countries, especially in East Africa, that our discussion is today about. So mostly in Kenya, Ethiopia, Uganda, Tanzania, in East Africa. I haven't prepared a presentation for today, just like an introduction for me. Yesterday I had a meeting with Konstantinos, so I found out that he also works for the equivalent of Enterprise Greece in Australia, which is quite useful, promoting businesses worldwide, Australian businesses. And since I have a collaboration with Enterprise Greece for quite many years, we've done business delegations together, trade missions to Africa in various countries. Also, as a member of the Greek African Chamber of Commerce, we help facilitate an ecosystem in Greece and the Balkans region to help companies find out about opportunities in Africa, get in touch with stakeholders, and of course participate in events, private or public, trade missions, etc., etc. Our company was founded by myself almost 10 years ago officially. Before that, both myself and my business partner, we were working as executives in various companies in Europe and then in Africa. Yeah, I'm confident that I will be able to contribute towards your discussion in any way I'm asked to. Thank you so much, all of you.
Thank you very much, John. So we are lucky to have now Johanna, Executive Director at the European Business Chamber. Good morning, Johanna.
Hi, how are you?
Oh, we're doing great. And we just heard from John from Greece, a member of the Greek African Business Chamber. He was explaining that
Very good.
also in his journey, in his career, he has been into investing in Africa and somehow also in Rwanda. But it's a good transition to the presentation. I did a small introduction of IBCR and yourself, but now you're here, you can expand that section. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Victor. And sorry for my delay. This changing times in Europe is a little confusing. So I thought it was at 11, but it's absolutely, I'm happy to be here now and have this opportunity to meet you and have these discussions around trade between Europe and Rwanda. Where are you now in your program? Do you want me to go directly to a presentation, or somebody else is speaking and then I will jump in after? Where are we in the
You will jump in after. We just want to hear from you, your background and what you are doing with EBCR in Rwanda, and also with IBO from the European perspective.
With the European Business Chamber in Rwanda, we are the main chamber for European companies in Rwanda. Our focus is on advocacy and being the voice of the European private sector. We have, Victor might have mentioned it, but we have 180 companies under the chamber. And we're also connected with the 20 European member states, so working directly with them on different matters. And then we do a lot of communication, ensuring that the private sector is well informed about regulations happening in the country, anything that is related to improving the business climate. And then we have a lot of events, including trade missions, supporting trade missions to Europe. So that's the newer things, trying to help companies go from here to visit Europe and explore opportunities there. But mostly every year we have 1, 2, 3 business delegations or missions or support to individual companies that wants to come to Rwanda. We do the business forums, we do the B2B, we do the B2G, we support the entry to the country, and then we support individual companies that are here. So that's my role. On the more global level, I'm also coordinator for Africa. There's 20 European business chambers across Africa that is willing and very happy to support any European, let's say, European continent. It's not necessarily member states, but European continent companies that are coming into the markets. And we are trying to strengthen regional integration, improve collaboration for the different regions, and also do advocacy and policy work in Brussels. So we do that every year. In June, we have some global meetings there where European business chambers globally arrive in Brussels to ensure that the private sector from the other markets have a voice towards the European Union, as we still have to do a lot when we are looking at the European competitiveness also on the African continent. That's our role across Africa in Rwanda and our global work. So that's me in short. I'm the director of the chamber here, and Victor is on our board. So that's the roles, the role division between the two of us.
Thank you very much, Johanna. And I'm definitely sure that John has been closely listening and find some common grounds so we can also see perspective between what we can do between Greece and Rwanda in terms of investment.
Perfect. Nice. And if you can zoom it in a little bit. Amazing. Okay, perfect. Let's begin. This is the third and final part of the webinar series, which is basically an initiative connecting academia, art, and trade with the aim to do something that we are doing very well at Philia, and that is building lasting global partnerships. We know that throughout history, trade and civilization have always advanced together. These two go together. And when people exchange goods, they exchange ideas, values, and opportunities. So after exploring academia and culture in our early sessions in the first two webinars, we now want to conclude with trade, and in that way complete the puzzle of international diplomacy through academia, art, and finally trade. So for us, this webinar is the first stage in Uniting Philia's long-term vision to strengthen the collaboration between the two regions with Rwanda and Greece as key gateways for a new era of partnerships and prosperity. But before we dive into today's presentation, into my presentation, please allow me to briefly introduce myself. So Victor, you can go to the next slide. My name is Konstantinos Sgouras. I'm the co-founder and head of international policy and administration at Uniting Philia. And I'm a graduate of Macquarie University, which is based in Sydney, where I earned a bachelor's degree in international relations. My professional background is in international relations, international trade, and public administration. More specifically, my career in international relations and international trade began at the Trade Commission of Greece in Australia, where I supported the Greek Commission, to increase Greece's exports to Australia and New Zealand, while also attracting investments from Australia and New Zealand to Greece. And today I continue working in the same field of international trade and investments, but this time with the Australian government. Within Uniting Philia, my responsibilities focus on two main areas. First, designing and implementing international strategies that aim to expand the organization's global presence. And second, overseeing daily operations to ensure that our team, Uniting Philia team, works effectively, coherently, and with a clear vision. So, what is Uniting Philia? Uniting Philia is a European nonprofit that is based in Athens and is connecting experts, organizations, and institutions across continents. And I will provide practical examples later. You could describe what we do as promoting cultural diplomacy, but in reality, we do something more than that. At Uniting Philia, we are connectors. We connect, and our mission is global interconnectivity. So what we do is building ecosystems that link professionals in trade, academia, and the arts, and of course, support them through consulting, policy advice, and business development. Now, during the last year, we have started materializing our strategic goal, which is to create a global hub that will connect trade and innovation with academia and arts. A good example is the first webinar that we called some weeks ago, where we connected an innovative Rwandan company with the DAISY research group at the Hellenic Open University, and in that way created a practical collaboration that connects two continents and also bridges academia with business and the broader private sector. This webinar for us, as I said previously, is the first milestone in Uniting Philia's strategic plan to expand our presence in Rwanda and East Africa in general. Our goal is simple and straightforward. We want to connect businesses and relevant organizations from Greece and the wider EU with other regions that we have presence. For instance, Southeast Asia, Korea, Australia. So we want to connect them with their counterparts in Rwanda and the East African community. But before we talk about solutions and how we can do it, it's very important to briefly see the dynamics defining the EU and EAC relations. The trade between EU and East Africa reached about 7.7 billion in 2024, with the European exports growing by 12% and imports by 8%. And Kenya accounts for nearly half of the EU and EAC trade, followed by Tanzania, Rwanda, and Uganda. Yet, this growth is only part of the story, because the East African community is now investing in removing service barriers via the core program, Common Objectives in Regional Economic Integration. And in that way, is creating an online platform for trading services across partner states. So services and digital sectors are becoming major opportunities, supported by ongoing EU-funded infrastructure and innovation programs. So these figures, these numbers show that the foundation for growth exists, but maybe there is still untapped potential for new collaborations and investments to flow. To realize this potential, we must also recognize some challenges that stand in the way and try to understand them. Try to understand how nonprofits can support the reduction of these challenges. Very briefly, we see that there are some occurring problems, for instance, and I have included the description below each problem: information gap, trust deficit, regulatory knowledge, cultural differences, sustainable development, and so on. Each of these problems translate into a missed investment opportunity and a missed partnership. So what we think at Unity in Philia, the way we see ourselves, is as connectors aiming to connect the right experts, for example, regulatory specialists with business leaders and academics. So we want to connect these experts to bridge these gaps effectively. And this is where nonprofit organizations like ours can play a very significant role in bringing the EU and East Africa closer together. And I will explain that further, how we can do it. But before I continue, I want to emphasize this. In both Europe and Rwanda, and in East Africa in general, there are organizations who do an amazing job. For example, in Greece, we have the Hellenic African Chamber of Commerce, and John is a member of the Hellenic African Chamber of Commerce. And in Rwanda, we have the European Business Chamber of Rwanda, and both are doing a fabulous job. So what we want in Unity in Philia is to add forces with you and make your efforts even more successful. So nonprofits, they complement governments and the private sector by focusing on trust, dialogue, and long-term partnerships. So we see Greece and Rwanda as strategic connectors. So Greece is a European gateway. That's how we see Greece. And Rwanda is a hub of innovation and leadership in East Africa. And by connecting these two gateways, what we want to do is to support trade relations that serve both regions. So what is special about nonprofits? We operate between governments, markets, and communities. And in that way, we build bridges, connections that others can't. What we do also is we strengthen capacity by helping institutions and businesses navigate international frameworks. And because we are neutral as a nonprofit, we are neutral and apolitical, we can convene governments, businesses, and communities, and in that way reduce friction and build trust. So as nonprofits, what we can also do is to test new models, pilot partnerships, and scale what works. And in fact, this webinar series, the last part of the webinar series, and Unity in Philia strategic plan for the European Union and EAC, how we see it is a new idea, we test a new idea that we are progressively implementing. And what we want at some point when this idea becomes more successful, it's to get the European Union and the East African community to engage and scale it up. And one reason that at Unity in Philia we believe that the role of connecting institutions, businesses, and so on in different regions becomes even more crucial is because of the rise of AI. And if you can move to the next slide, please. Now, AI is a monumental innovation of mankind, and it is transforming every domain. It's changing every domain, including ours. For instance, let's say legal analysis or trade forecasting are now supported, or in some cases, executed by AI. So expertise alone is no longer enough, especially as we are developing super intelligence, which is going to be enormously more intelligent than humans. So in the AI era, the ability to connect, to align people, institutions, and cultures is what will drive progress, because AI can process data, but it cannot build trust or interpret cultural meaning. Those are human strengths, and they remain decisive and hopefully will remain decisive in the future. So as AI expands into global governance and trade, the need for connectors like us will only grow. And that's where Unity in Philia makes its unique contribution. We are developing something that AI cannot replace, or in the worst case scenario, will take decades to replace. So let's see how this connector role appears within the stakeholder ecosystem that we're building. And this is probably my favorite slide, because I actually started being obsessed, in a good way, obsessed with the term stakeholder ecosystem when I realized what we actually do at Unity in Philia. So after many months of managing the organization, I realized this. I realized that we are progressively developing an international stakeholder ecosystem that has on-ground and permanent presence in several points of the globe and is expanding rapidly. And our work, what we do, brings together governments, NGOs, academia, business, and civil society into one collaborative network. And I saw this in practice in the first webinar, when we basically connected and started a collaboration between a university and a private company, an innovative private company in Rwanda. So in this ecosystem, each stakeholder in this ecosystem plays a role, has an importance. But Unity in Philia's role, our role, is to ensure that these actors, the stakeholders, align, communicate, and co-create practical results. And this approach can transform dialogue into outcome and ensure that initiatives deliver measurable impact across the two regions, like we did in the first webinar. And of course, beyond strategy, trade has a deeper role to play in building stability. So as you can see, the title here is From Trade to Global Stability. What do I mean by that? Please do not forget that the person that is presenting right now is representing a nonprofit that specializes in cultural diplomacy and has the goal to connect the world. When we connect cultures and institutions, trade stops being transactional. It becomes transformational. And I want to repeat that. When we connect cultures and institutions, trade stops being transactional and it becomes transformational. So supporting the trade relations and any kind of relations between the European Union and East Africa, for us, isn't just about economics. It's about people, partnerships, and building a stable and thriving future. Because when we build cultural and institutional connections, we ensure that trade serves global interconnectivity and not division. If we can move to the next slide, please. So this is the strategic vision for Rwanda for the period 2025 and 2028. So as you can see here, for 2025, we have organized a webinar series. And the plan for next year is to continue the webinars, maybe in other fields beside culture and trade, and also have an on-ground project in Rwanda by the end of 2026. In 2027, we are planning to do the same in Greece. Once this model becomes successful enough, we want to expand it in other countries of the EAC, of the East African Community, and create, as I said previously, a hub of collaboration. And now, please allow me to conclude. Today's world doesn't need more competition. I strongly believe that. It needs more connection. And at Unity in Philia, we don't just talk about collaboration, we make it happen. Everyone here, policymakers who are watching this right now, business leaders, academics, change makers, and to everyone who is going to watch this in the future. For instance, university students and new entrepreneurs. This is an invitation for you. Join us, join Unity in Philia in building new partnerships between Europe and East Africa. And together, let's create a future where trade drives progress and collaboration becomes our most powerful tool for peace and prosperity. So I would like you to use the email you see here at the bottom of the slide. You can contact us via the amazing policymaker that we have in East Africa, Victor. You can visit our website, find us on LinkedIn. We want you to come with us and be part of an organization that turns visions into reality.
Thank you very much, Konstantinos. And I'm sure that John and Johanna have been following closely the presentation because, as I said earlier, there's so much in common that we can do for the trade sector between the EU, Greece, Rwanda, East Africa, and vice versa. And I wanted to, in this regard, have the insights of Johanna. What do you think the presentation for Konstantinos can be of interest for a European business organization in East Africa, and especially the one in Rwanda?
Thank you, Victor, for putting me on the spot. It's really nice. Thank you for the presentation. With a background in anthropology, I really agree that cultural understanding is really important if we have to facilitate trade in a productive way between East Africa, Rwanda, and Europe. It's half the win if we have facilitators who can ensure that people understand the context that they are working in. It's not working together. It's not just about numbers. And if it makes sense, it's also about the understanding of each other. So I think having, even if we are really focused on trade and business support, we do have collaborations with development partners also in Rwanda, including GIZ from Germany, other institutions. So because depending on the type of institution, you have some qualities and some opportunities. So bridging that is something that EBCI is already doing in terms of also implementing grants from the EU, making improvements to the private sector, trying to improve the ecosystem and connecting the stakeholders. And I really liked your map, the stakeholder mapping. Let me see what you called it. Yes, the ecosystem. Stakeholder ecosystem, because it looks very familiar to me. We have the same ecosystem, same type of stakeholders if we are looking at our chamber. I think there's plenty of opportunities in terms of facilitation for companies or for startups. So really depending also on the focus on the type of stakeholders that you have on your side. We are also really ready to, and especially also with Victor being an expert on trade for East Africa, you have some good partners in terms of facilitation on this side. So that was my takeaway from what I just heard.
Thank you very much, Johanna. We will have your presentation after on the BCR, but before I wanted to have John's insights as well, and also give him this opportunity to develop what's the Hellenic Africa Business Chamber is doing. And the floor is yours, John.
Thank you very much. First of all, congrats for the presentation. It was quite insightful. And for me, since I'm the new guy here, it's all new about your NGO and your efforts. I really appreciate the way that you have constructed both the operations that goes along with the vision, and myself being a businessman, I like things concrete and not vague. So I like the fact that you put it in a time frame that is quite distinct, meaning that starting with the webinars, of course, and getting to know each other. The second step, as I noticed, is projects, both online and on the ground. I would like to hear more about how you intend to implement that and how to make the transition, because usually this is the bottleneck of everything when we go from theory to practice. Definitely we can assist. As I mentioned before, we have presence across Africa, and I've spent myself lots and lots of time in East Africa. Unfortunately, not in Rwanda, but after Zambia, I call Kenya my home in Africa. And I've also spent lots of time in Ethiopia and in Uganda. So definitely East Africa is, if you ask me, the most lucrative region of, let's say, the three sub-Saharan regions, West, East, and Southern, for overseas companies, whether they are from Europe or the United States, or even from Australia, Asia, Oceania, or wherever, because it's a mixture of development, openness for market entry, and investments and infrastructure in place. Because usually European companies, they expect certain standards and they cannot find them, for example, in many countries in West Africa or even in Central Africa. And our company offering mainly services like business development, market entry, lobbying with governments, project management, creating companies. We have the experience after 150 collaborations so far throughout the years to understand that there are specific things that are lucrative to companies. Now, in terms of the Greek African Chamber of Commerce, or Hellenic, as it is the official name, because Hellenic means Greek in Greek. So the Greek African Chamber of Commerce and Industry is a quite old chamber, started in the 90s. I joined 10 years ago as a board member the last 6 or 7 years, I don't remember exactly, and I'm quite active. So as I said before, we have created an ecosystem that helps companies understand, first of all, what Sub-Saharan Africa is, because Greek companies, and I have noticed it also with other European countries, are more familiar with North Africa because of geography, because of old ties with, I don't know, colonization or whatever, between maybe France or maybe Italy and Spain with Morocco. But Sub-Saharan Africa is a gray area, and the companies are starving to learn things, to do things, but they don't know where to start. Operations like the ones Konstantinos described definitely are going to help towards that. Again, I'm emphasizing that I don't like theory much. I understand that theory is a prerequisite to understand things, but I like things to be happening. And this is what I think I can contribute to. And as a chamber now, even though I'm not talking officially on behalf of the chamber because the board is not aware of this meeting, definitely it would be interesting for the chamber to have an MOU with your NGO, or at least an introduction. If you can send me like an official email, I can forward it to the president himself and explain to him what this is about. He's always interested in new ideas, in new collaborations. Actually, we are organizing a trade mission January 2026 to Kenya. It was my personal idea, but I handed it over to a committee because I will not be able to facilitate and participate. In a couple of weeks, we have the first meeting to present it, public presentation at EVA. I'm pretty sure Eleni knows EVA, and Konstantinos will also join. It will be the first introduction, the live introduction. Then a follow-up is going to be in place by the end of the year. Many companies already have applied. My initial idea was to combine Kenya with at least another country, but there was not enough time. So we had considered Ethiopia, Uganda, Rwanda, but the board decided just to go with Kenya. Our chamber is a part of EPCOM, same as the chambers that you've mentioned before in in the UK and in Brussels. I find the whole idea, the whole initiative quite interesting, and I would like to contribute in any way I can be helpful.
Thank you very much, John. And this is a great transition to Johanna and her presentation on why Rwanda. And definitely it's my influence your board to add, if possible, a second country in East Africa tour, because, and Johanna will develop that European Business Chamber in Rwanda has been a key actor in connecting trade missions from Europe to Rwanda, and most of the time the itinerary involves East African countries and definitely Rwanda.
A short view on Rwanda and why we think it's interesting investing in Rwanda and the opportunities here. Rwanda is has one of the fastest growing economies. We have a 6 to 8% annual growth each year, and it reflects in the business landscape. We can actually see that the private sector and the opportunities and the economy is growing. We have it's a small country, but there's 13 million and 70% is under 30. So there's a huge youth population that is coming into the labor market. We see more and more companies choosing to come to Rwanda and hire people for outsourcing and global services. So that sector is really one of our fastest growing sectors. They're safe, it's low from corruption, it's reform driven and has a reform driven government. So we also have a part of the East African market and the larger African market. So yeah, there's opportunities arriving in Rwanda. You have opportunities to especially take it as it's an easier landing space than many of our neighbors in terms of setting up shop, testing out your products, understanding the East African context. And from there, if your things are working, you will have an easier time to expand into the East African communities. Kigali is a quite nice city to be in, and there's a really strong vision for the city. In terms of construction opportunities, the town is growing, and also there's hubs. The government is focusing, expanding, so not everything is happening in Kigali. Then for the service sectors, finance, ICT, and tourism, it represents 50% of the GDP. Rwanda also have a strong focus on the green growth and renewable energy agenda. And I don't know about Greece, but Denmark, where I come from, it's on our radar, and why Denmark has also just opened an embassy in Rwanda. In terms of the business environment, Rwanda is in top 2 in Africa in the ease of doing business. We have special economic zones and special tax incentives that makes it more interesting for European investors to come to Rwanda. The Rwandan Development Board is very active and has created a one-stop center for investors. That's where you can go with all your issues related to investment, because no matter where you are, you will find that you are in a new market and you need support. So besides the support we have as a chamber, the official place to go would be the one-stop center at RDB. We have fast registrations. I know that I've allowed myself to say up to 48 hours, but sometimes you can even get your documents down to 6 hours after making a business registration in Rwanda. And that's one of the exceptional things in terms of speed and setting things up. It goes very fast. We also have some tax holidays, custom exemptions, and 100% profit repatriation from Rwanda. And Rwanda is ranked one of the most safest countries in Africa. I think I said it before, but in terms of doing business, it makes a big difference that you can transport products from one town to another, that people are less likely to scam or steal from you when you're setting up a business. And it makes it easier to do business in Rwanda. It's not perfect. No place is perfect, but it makes a big difference in terms of wanting to invest and creating that platform of trust that the cultural bridge is also supposed to do. So that's also part of your job, to inform people about what it means for this context if you have companies wanting to invest in Rwanda. Then it's a strategic location to the East Africa and the Great Lakes. We also have of course, there is some challenges. Rwanda is a small domestic market. It has a limited customer base. It's landlocked. So transport costs can be more, it costs more, basically. There is a heavy reliance on agriculture and vulnerable to climate shocks. There is some skills gaps still, but it's a focus for the government. And it's worth considering, if you are to invest in Rwanda, that you also invest in the people and not think that you can just get everything you want from the beginning in terms of skills. So a part of your investment is also investing in the people here. And it's really important to have that in mind when you're coming into Rwanda. And then access to affordable finance for SMEs still remains limited. And then a quick overview on the sectors. I'll try to do it a bit quick. So we have ICT. It contributes to 3% of the GDP and is growing annually at 15%. Kigali Innovation City project is to attract $300 million and also plus tech investments. Rwanda targets to be Africa's BPO, so the Global Business Services, a hub for that. It's really well located because we are most of the time on the same time zone, which makes it easier. And then you have most of the population, they grew up both speaking English and French. So they are, and then what the feedback we get is they are more stable. The turnover is less in the Rwandan workforce compared to some other African countries. 95% 4G coverage with strong mobile penetration. So that also helps Rwanda being able to deliver and be an interesting place to set up shop. If we look at the manufacturing industry, manufacturing contributes to 7% of the GDP, projected to reach 20% by 2030. In the construction sector, it grows 10% annually, driven by urbanization and infrastructure. I think I talked a bit about that, but it's really like affordable housing projects, for example, would maybe be something that could be interesting also for Greek companies. Then we have the agro-processing is a priority in Rwanda because Rwanda imports 60% of processed food. So it's a major gap for investors if you have the opportunities to come and produce in Rwanda. Rwanda exports 90% of construction materials, so it's also an opportunity for local production. Then we have the service and finance. Financial sector is growing with 16 plus licensed banks and regional integration of the banks. So we have similar banks for the region and 460 plus microfinance institutions. The real estate market is growing 3 to 6% annually, and Kigali housing demands is increasing with urban population. Rwanda aims to position itself as a regional arbitration and legal hub as well. That also should give some confidence in coming to Rwanda. Then we have health and defense. So in terms of healthcare spending, there's a spending of 7.5% of the GDP, with 90% of the population covered by community health insurance, which is also quite special for Rwanda, that it has been a real priority from the government that you need to ensure your population's health and access to healthcare to be able to also grow and develop your communities. So there is a growing demand for specialized healthcare, medical technology, and Rwanda's strategy is health tourism. So there's Kigali Health City is currently being built. And I think that's also, there could be so many sub things that could be developed around Kigali Health City. It's not only hospitals, but it's everything that goes with that ecosystem of, it could be dentists, for example, it could be food, it could be anything that is related and could contribute to this project. It's an opportunity in Rwanda. And then Rwanda is modernizing its defense with needs in airspace control, border security, rapid deployment and future capacity. The police are upgrading through community policing, firefighting, investigation, to crime management, private sector security, regulations. So there's always like specific things within this sector that holds opportunity for European companies. One of the conversations I've had with the police is around firefighting and investigation tools. So why companies should come to Rwanda? Political stability, safety, ranked amongst the safest in Africa, ease of doing business, market access to East Africa, and young skilled workforce. We have the special economic zones, tax holidays, representation of profits, and sustainability, focus, green growth, smart cities, renewable energy. A few key takeaways. Rwanda is reform-driven, ambitious economy with consistent growth and stability, attractive gateway to East Africa, supportive business environment. So we are also here to be of support. So we are an ecosystem that are really focused on supporting European investors. And then there is investment opportunities and market opportunities in Rwanda to invest in within the different sectors that we have. So we really feel that European investors can play a leading role in Rwanda's next growth chapter through innovation, partnerships, and sustainable investment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Johanna. So that's the PV presentation that also Johanna will be followed up closely, because now he has more insights on why Rwanda, and definitely I can pitch it to his chamber at some point. And so in line with the Unity in Philia agenda 2025, 2028, we can find common ground.
But maybe one thing I could add is also that we over the years, John, you mentioned EPCAM. EBCR has, even if we don't have an active, partnership with them, we did sign an agreement to be part and have been following the newsletters from EPCAM. They also wanted us to come to their General Assembly, but which was a bit far away from Rwanda, so we couldn't do that. But it is on our radar. We are part of the global network. We look at Business Europe. We look at some of these institutions, because the biggest challenge, let me say that, is to find the European companies, find the European entrepreneurs that are willing to take up the challenge of Africa and get the information to them. Right. So for us, we can sit here with everything we know and what we do and know the opportunities. But if we can't get the information to the right people, and the Rwandan government also have their own limitations, we have our limitations. Having these conversations are super important. And where we can, both on the African cluster with the 20 European business organizations across Africa, and from EBCR, where we can create these links also more directly to chambers in Europe, host this type of seminars, being able to present the opportunities and the opportunities to collaborate. I think it's really important for us. So I also want to just highlight that what the conversation today is important for us as a chamber here, because it is within our mandate to be able to attract more investment and European investment into Africa. And on the European level, their focus is also on the European competitiveness. And if we don't communicate and talk, we are not going to be able to get there together.
Thank you, Johanna. But I wanted to emphasize on the fact that EBCR has been quite successful in attracting and hosting business delegations from Europe for the last 5 years. Alone in 2025, you have been receiving quite a number of those trade missions. Can you shortly talk about that?
Sure. We have around 20, I'm saying around because we just lost the Belgian embassy, moved out, but and sometimes new EU member states are coming in. We do work directly on doing trade missions, right? And that can be through the embassies. It could be through trade agencies that need support in Rwanda. We have had delegations from Poland, from Slovakia, from Finland. There was a Nordic where we were participated and contributed. The Nordic missions coming to Rwanda this year. German delegation. So we are always part of the ecosystem here. Some of them we have been directly employed, right? So to do the full business forums, all the B2B, all the preparation. Some of them we are contributing to the B2B. Some of them we are participating, but we are always in the loop of these kind of business missions to Rwanda, and have also been in conversations with our colleagues in East Africa on how we can ensure that if people are coming, a little bit what you talked about, John, sometimes like organizing everything for 2 countries is a lot, and then there's timing things. But it's important to highlight that there is people on the ground, and then we also do it for individual companies.
Thank you, Johanna. Before going to the next presentation, I wanted to have you say, Konstantinos, following John's and Johanna's presentation on what's done. And John says that it needs things to be done. It's also the way we are doing it in BCR and in Rwanda, and also what we are looking for in Philia. We are making things done because we are practical in our approach, in our implementation. It's not all about the strategy, but it's also about the execution. And this is where all of us are good at. So what do you think, Konstantinos, on these common grounds that have been highlighted in the presentation, and how Unity Philia as well can leverage on that existing entities to fast-track its agenda for Rwanda 25-28?
Thank you for the question, Victor. So listen to what John said previously about the difficulty of finding the number of European investors to invest in Rwanda. I want to ask a question, and please get a response from both Johanna and John. From your experience investing in Africa or attracting investments from Europe to Africa, what are the top misconceptions European investors hold, and what can we do to help de-risk those misconceptions?
I think we have had business missions coming from all over Europe. In general, many people, I can just talk about Rwanda, but many people are not really updated on where the countries are today. So most often, what people have in mind is the conflict that they heard about at some point that was big enough to reach the news. So even some people who are from our business missions that are arriving in Rwanda, and when you talk to them and it's the first time, sometimes it's the first time on the continent, they still have this, like my family was concerned because they heard about the conflict in 94. So there's something about upgrading, because we don't get it from the news channels in Europe, like how well is it going in Africa in these markets, blah, blah, blah. This is not reaching European news. So ensuring that people have access to the right information is really important. So I think that's number one. Then I think it's about trust. We have quite trustful societies in Europe, but we don't necessarily trust others outside in other continents. How do we build trust between potential business partners? I think it's really important because there is this insecurity around corruption. How do we deal with it? How much is it? How is it going to impact our investments? What does it mean when you're setting up in the African context? So I think like addressing that, but also be realistic, right? So I think that's at least when people are operating, I think that's our job also as chambers is not to sell blindly the opportunities, but we also have to say you need to take XYZ risk into consideration, but this is also the opportunity despite of that. And this is the institution or the people who can help you overcome some of the barriers that you will find setting up in a new market. And then the last thing, I think also many people would like to come, what we also see, they come to sell their products because they're so excited about their own products, but they don't necessarily understand the context of some of these markets and what it actually takes, and that it might take that they need to set up an office, or they might not have to have a person on the ground that can represent them for or find the right partners for their products to become successful, and that it takes time. It's not just an easy sell because you have a good product from Europe. That was a few of them.
Thank you, Johanna. John?
All right. I have so many things in my mind. I need to address lots of them, but I'll try to be brief. Let's take it from the beginning of the funnel. Companies worldwide do not see Africa as the first choice of doing business. This is the cruel reality, whether we like it or not. And this comes from a person that makes a living out of this service. First of all, I agree with Johanna that they have a false perception for the current situation, not only in the small countries like Rwanda, but even for the giants like Nkindi, South Africa, Kenya, DRC, Congo. So number one, is somehow to get them informed and to make them realize the opportunities there, that the market is less saturated than the rest of the world. There are opportunities there. The return on investment is quite significant compared to other regions. The average age, the median age of the consumers, all these things. After that, when you make them realize all these things, there are two ways that governments, organizations, chambers, private companies like mine choose to work. The easy way and the hard way. And I'm not bragging here, but the easy way is to promote investments, to promote how great a country is, how nice incentives it gives. I do that. I've represented ZDA, the Zambian Development Agency, quite much throughout the years. But it all comes to the basic sales principles. Companies, they don't care about how good you are, how good your product is, how good your country is, how good your incentives are. They only care what is in for them. So the right pitching in 2025 is not, we have the greatest environment, we have trade zones, we have incentives, we have tax reliefs, we have repatriation of funds, etc., etc., etc. The real value is how you're going to help them do what they are visualizing they're going to do. Take them by the hand and walk them in, whether it is export products or services, or create companies, or create facilities and manufacturing facilities, or warehouses, or taking projects, or lobbying with government. They need someone to do it for them. This is what we do. Of course, we're a private company, but I preach the same thing to our chamber, to other chambers, to Enterprise Greece, etc., etc. Don't just put your ministers going out there and begging for investments to the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, these rich countries. Oh, we are great. We need investments. We welcome you. It's like the same thing when companies that export, they say, we are ready to export and feel free to ask for our credentials and our prices, and we'll send you samples. For the love of God, of course you are going to do that. This is not added value. The added value is how you're going to help me solve my problem. And in sales, you sell if you fulfill one of the following three. You make someone gain money, you make someone save money, or you make them more beautiful. So if you don't do that, of course, relatively in what we're discussing today, it's inevitable you're going to lose. And it's not only for this NGO or for our chamber or for the Enterprise Greece or Enterprise, Australia. This is the mindset. So if Unity in Philia wants to be different, has to be not only practical, as you correctly said, and I respect and I admire that you are practical, but you need to act on their behalf. You need to nurture the companies like babies, because these babies, sometimes they have billions, but they don't want to spend them in Africa. They want to spend them first in where they feel more secure. But if you make them feel secure, that they're not going to lose their money, they're not going to lose their time.
We only have 10 minutes, but I need to do a follow-up question to John. Which sectors like renewable energy, logistics, fintech, and so on, do you believe that hold the greatest untapped potential in East Africa? And what kind of European partnerships have been most effective in catalyzing growth in the region?
This is not a one-way answer, because the easy answer would be to say that renewable energy, infrastructure, technology, software and SaaS, these are the most common. But also more traditional F&B, local production, or electrical, automotive space, all these are quite lucrative. It's not the sector, it's the way you implement it. whether you have a stone or a rocket, it has to do with how you're going to use it. So I've seen companies with the best offers fail in Africa, and I've seen companies with the worst succeeding. So I'm emphasizing what I was saying before. The implementation matters, not the actual sector. Of course, with different sectors, you have different probabilities. That's why I mentioned those sectors.
Thank you very much, John. So I'm going to thank you very much, Konstantinos, for the question, but also I want to switch to the next presentation for ML Corporate Services, which actually has an answer to the question from John and how to execute the strategy. It's also an answer to some of the question that was raised by Johanna and the other participants, because when an investment is coming to Rwanda and is looking on how to get help to make it happen, there is limitation of the government, there's the limitation of different institutions, but when the private sector is handling the two hands, the solution, the execution, and the strategy. So this is where ML Corporate Services comes in. It was founded 5 years ago by a lady called Juel. Unfortunately, she's not here today with us. So I've been asked to do the presentation on her behalf. So I hope you can see the screen. So basically, the company built compliance vehicles in partnership with the Kigali International Financial Center. And this is the framework that is familiar with companies in Europe, East Southeast Asia, Singapore, Hong Kong, Luxembourg in Europe, but also in the US. As John said, these companies have to be taken care of like babies. So this is, I would say, a good transition. And also it serves as a North African investment gateway through trust, transparency, innovation. So it's licensed through the trust company service provider. And they're a member of the Rwanda Financial Center, which is a platform for compliance and transparent investments facilitation in Rwanda. And the expertise leads them to be able to support the financial center in attracting those investments in a compliant and regulatory framework. So what do you do? They set up your structure, the fiduciary and administration, regulatory and compliance advisory, BSO, and also investment relations and strategic advisory. So this is what these investments, foreign investment needs when they come to Rwanda, when they come to Africa. And this is what John was saying. We don't have that. We don't have a framework that supports and that leads us to be successful regardless of what we're selling. This is usually the solution huge investment are using to settle in Rwanda, because being able to be established as a headquarter, as a holding entity in Rwanda, as a fund and asset management or a family office through ML Corporate Services, give you that security and provide you a way to minimize the risk. So this is how ML Corporate Services works. Why partnering with ML Corporate Services? Because they are pioneering. Is the first Rwandan that own the TCSP license under the central bank. TCSP stands for Trust Company Service Provider. And they have the regulatory expertise. They are trusted partners, and they help investors, institutions, and entrepreneurship build compliant, sustainable, and high-impact vehicles across Africa. You can have your office or your headquarters in Kigali, and from there, operates in neighboring countries, for example, where the risk is higher. But on the other hand, you have the safety and the predictability and the projection that Rwanda offers in terms of financial center. So why the PhD matters to regional global investors? That's also something that will be interesting for John and the panel here. It's all about tax incentive and legal certainty. So this is also a bottleneck when investment from Europe is concerned. And the tax incentive that we are seeing here, like the corporate income tax at 3%, to the zero withholding tax, investment protection treaties. We have a non-double taxation agreement with dozens of countries, including in Europe, Luxembourg, France, Belgium, and no restriction on currency, on foreign currency representation for profit. This is actually a practical and tangible way to highlight how the investment is protected through ML Corporate Services and the Kigali International Financial Center. And why now? Because definitely Rwanda offers a compliant access to 144 $6.4 billion market in Africa through the Kigali International Finance Market. So it's not only Rwanda that we're talking about. Johanna earlier was saying that Rwanda has a real small market, domestic market size, but you can reach to the whole continent. You can have regulatory compliance through license to the TCSPs like ML Corporate Services. And the framework is aligned with OECD, very important. Paris-based organization is the model that is accepted worldwide, and usually working with FATF for anti-money laundering and counterterrorism financing. So these are legal and regulatory frameworks that are not existing in many sub-Saharan African countries. And this is where you can attract investors' confidence as well. I want to speed up the presentation. We already talked about why the Kigali International Finance matter, so the regional and the global investment. So we have here a different scenario, whereas the regional renewable energy fund aims to raise capital from EU impact investor to finance solar, mini grids, and clean energy projects across East and Central Africa. So you can structure it into the fund manager establish a collective investment scheme or SPV, special purpose vehicle, and the KFC regulatory framework. These vehicles benefit from around 3% CIG, corporate income tax, no foreign currency restriction, and access to DTA, the non-double taxation agreement with European and African countries that we already have. The fund administration, accounting, and trustee oversight and conduct a licensed TCSP like ML Corporate Services, and regulated by the Central Bank of Rwanda, and to ensure a full compliance with international governance and anti-money laundering standards. So the impact is the funds maintain Africa-based transparency while meeting EU and ESG's reporting and investor protection standards. So European investors gain direct exposure to African impact projects through an compliant Africa jurisdiction rather than traditional offshore IFCs. So this model strengthens South-North capital flow while reinforcing Rwanda's role as a regional fiduciary hub. This is a practical way of structuring an investment and being successful through KFC and through TCSPs like ML Corporate Services. So we still have practical use cases here that we can share on attracting investment, cross-border partnership, compliance, alignment, sustainable investment. So all these are recurrent in actually what investors were looking into. And we already have the framework providing the questions, the answer to the questions. Still, we still have practical example for regional fund and existing EU impact investors. So I think, John, that was one of probably your concern earlier, and that's the fact that in Africa it's complicated to set up and to implement. But here, through corporate services, this is what they have been working on and implementing. So it's not about the strategy, but it's also about the implementation, the execution. These are different available investments, structuring vehicle at the Kigali International Financial Center, collective investment scheme, holding companies, SPVs, special purpose vehicles, trust and foundation, global trading entities, and intellectual property companies. So all these, the different structure that EU companies can use when it comes to investing in Rwanda. So these are, again, the sectors completing what Johanna and John were talking about earlier, the key strategic sectors to invest in Rwanda: financial and fintech, green energy, education, creative industry. Of course, this is one of Philia's pillar: agriculture and manufacturing, and healthcare and technology. Earlier, we were talking about Rwanda building Rwanda Health City to attract health tourism. And this is something that is actually very profitable. And one of the key sectors for investment in Rwanda Financial Center. We've been discussing the different leverages from the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement integration. This is cross-border barrier issue that are actually lifted up from the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. We still have the framework for EU-Rwanda cooperation and partnership like the next development and so on. We'll just end the presentation on Why Rwanda and why ML Corporate Services? So the process to design, access, goals, and select optimal legal structure, setup, management, registration, Nkindi Financial Center, and licensing, and administer representation for the governance and the structure and purpose, and also the compliance. So basically, that was in short the presentation for ML Corporate Services, and the reason it was important to go through it is because actually, and I anticipated that it was one of the answers of what John raised and the question he raised, and also what the challenge Johanna raised in her presentation. And definitely, when it comes to choose why Rwanda, then you have a reason why. Yeah. Thank you very much. We are 5 minutes past, but I will give the floor to Konstantinos.
Great.
Thank you, Konstantinos.
I really need to have the question. I understand that it's 8:35 here with 5 minutes past. But first of all, before asking the questions to Johanna, regarding something important that you said previously, I think we should leverage the connections that were made here today. Maybe support the connection between the Hellenic African Chamber of Commerce and the Chamber of Commerce in Rwanda. And for your information, in the first semester of 2026, I'm planning to do similar webinars that will include experts in international trade and investments from different areas of the world. That will include Greece, Africa, Australia, Vietnam, and possibly another 2 countries in Southeast Asia. And I'm going to invite you, of course, to participate as experts and expand this network. But I just want to ask questions to John because it's very important. You mentioned previously that Rwanda has a large young population. You mentioned that the population is 13 million. And let me see my notes. 70% is under the age of 30. And I did a very quick calculation. This is a little bit more than 9 million people under the age of 30, okay? So I assume there is the need for workforce skills, especially like in technical and specialized fields. Now, since we have active collaborations with universities around the world, and the network of collaboration is growing, how can collaborations between European educational institutions and Rwanda organizations help bridge this gap? What can we do? What connections can we make that can help to bring workforce skills in Rwanda through education and in support with academia?
It's about having the interest and resources to do. I think there's different programs that are giving young Rwandans opportunities to take part of their educations in Europe, ensuring that they get some financial aid to go. So that's some of the things that is happening. Then we have the institutions here on the ground that are doing the education. Then in a global world, it's also making the trainings, like skills trainings, available online, ensuring that what they're trying to do with the government here is, of course, to through TBET programs, different programs, is aligned. What is the private sector looking for? What skills are they looking for? What can we calculate in terms of skills of the future that they need to be able to do? And we just passed, that was actually a little funny. They just not so long ago finished like a college for coding in Rwanda in the rural area. However, when we passed it, both of us were in the car, was like, but this should be for AI now, right? So things are going so fast that some of the traditional institutions, as we know them, you cannot always follow. But I think it holds a lot of potential. Actually, it's one of the things I think, like any kind of, if you could train youth on how to, in a smart way, use AI for work skills and delivering, because they like the critical thinking, right? They have not necessarily been trained to. Our generation, we have been handwriting and delivering things. Then you go into using computers. Now we have AI, and there's like skills to manage that in the good way in the future of work. I think it's really important. I can see it just with our own teams that often they just copy paste, and you can see everything is AI, and it doesn't give, like you're talking about, the feeling and cultural understanding. If everything is AI, you also have to tell it needs to behave like a European if we are communicating to Europeans. It needs to have a sensitiveness to the audience and so on. But our the young generation doesn't yet have that understanding or critical thinking in using these instruments. So I think that's one of the things that maybe could be very concrete thing to do.
Agree with that. I want to thank all of you, Victor for being an amazing moderator, John for participating, Johanna. It was great to meet you. And as I said previously, let's leverage this opportunity, stay connected, and do more things in 2026.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the panel. Thank you for attending, and see you soon.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Right.